This is the kind of show that I get both excited and worried to talk about. The former because the material itself has me so emotionally charged that I just need to rant about it, and a review is a good way to do so. But worried because it's one of those polarizing shows where some people say that it is like the equivalent to coitus in space, while others say, oh god no, why, my eyes are literally bleeding, oh the pain, my god, the pain. And I know that no matter what I say, I'm gonna end up pissing off about half the people that watch this video, but sometimes shit's just gotta be said. You gotta let this out sometimes. It's healthy. It's good for you. You just have to remain civil about it and realize that everybody should respect your opinion. Unless you're like me and express those opinions on the internet, in which case, good luck. You're gonna need it. So, Guilty Crown. I only watched it recently for this review, actually, but I've heard a lot about it. It's these polarizing shows that are so hard to ignore because you have all these people that just start watching it wondering what all the hubbub is about. And before they know it, they've picked a side and are out for blood in this proverbial gladiatorial arena. But I decided for a time that I would stay out of this one because I'm not one for this kind of conflict. Unfortunately, I was silly and I put this show on the voting list for the Eureka of Awesome, so here we are. And in case you didn't figure it out, I have opinions. Opinions that need to be said. Now, most of it I wouldn't be surprised if it's been said before, considering just how talked about this show, at least was when it came out and in the years since. But if I just said nothing and drank to forget, I don't think I'd be very happy. With any luck, this will give you another perspective on the series. If you have seen it, maybe it'll get you to watch it. If you haven't, and if neither of those things, then I guess this is the equivalent to me throwing a Molotov cocktail on a fight that's more or less done by now. Ladies, gentlemen, and others, my name is Arcada, and welcome to Glass Reflection. Today, the 2011 sci-fi series from director Tetsuo Araki and production IG, Guilty Crown. Let's jam! Let's start off by listing out a number of things about this show's setting to get you acclimatized. It is the future, in a Japan that recently was the victim of a biological weapon attack, an attack deadly enough to cause the UN to send in a military organization in order to restore order, at the cost of said society's freedom. Of course, there was some who didn't like that sort of thing very much, and would like Japan to be independent. So what is their recourse? To rebel. Therefore, a quote-unquote terrorist organization named Funeral Parlor appears with designs of liberation. So does this sound familiar to you? What if I told you that the UN's organization known as the GHQ likes to use mass-produced mechs to enforce their will, with very good pilots getting their own personalized super awesome machines? Is this still not ringing a bell at all? You sure? Because this sounds like Code Geass to me. And you know, I would continue with that comparison if the leader of Funeral Parlor, Guy, was the main character. Surprisingly, he is not. Meet Shu Oma, an averagely bland high school-aged protagonist, as indicated by his hairstyle, who just happens to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, getting himself injected by a genetic weapon that allows him to use the hearts of others by turning them into weapons. Because apparently every character in the show has their own personal device inside of them known as a void, and what that void can do is based on a person's personality. So what Shu is now able to do is pull these voids out from people and use them to solve various situations. It's actually really awesome and unique. I was impressed by it. Shu gets unwillingly drafted into Funeral Parlor and has to help Guy and the team fight the GHQ, else a lot of people are going to die. So the base story, not that interesting, but I did like the fact that while it was generally simple, it did have this one little more complicated twist to it. This, of course, being the use of voids, and while this is technically a gimmick, it is a gimmick that could lead to some potentially really awesome character stories. Problem is, many of those stories aren't done very well. No, actually, no, I take that back, because the stories themselves have potential. But what screws with everything is that the characters convert into assholes for the sake of progressing the story. No, seriously. I think I can count maybe 3 out of the dozen or so characters that get decent screen time who I actually wanted to survive this mess by the end of it. Also, to give you a glimpse into my frustrations about the show as a whole, let me tell you that our main character, Shu, is not one of those 3. The series gets divided into 2 main arcs with a rather nice climax in the middle of them. But the theme that I got from the show's first half is, how can we manipulate Shu so that he does what we want? And I'm not joking either. Shu is manipulated by everybody. He's manipulated by his friends, his family, by Guy, by the girl he's in love with, all of them. And while that in itself isn't bad, you'd think that after getting screwed over so many times that he would smarten up by the midway, but alas, that's not what happened. And the worst part about it is that none of them care about him as a person. They might care about him superficially, but they only really care about what he can do for them. He's like a disposable object to them. And considering he's the only one with the genome weapon, he can actually do quite a lot. But instead of giving Shu a proper reason to actually help anyone, they just manipulate him into doing whatever they want. And this really bothers me because manipulation is one of those things that I don't like when it's used this way. You can have characters like Yagami Light from Death Note, or again Zero from Code Geass. You can have them manipulate the crap out of people, but as long as the show knows where they stand on the moral high ground, I'm okay with it. The second arc of the show reminds me more of Gurren Lagann, with Shu in the role of Simone. Actually, if you even want to apply the Gurren Lagann comparison to the first arc as well on top of Code Geass, because it's kind of like Shu with Simone, but instead of having a mentor like Kamina, Guy is that mentor and he acts like Lelouch. But, you know, I'll just leave the comparison at that. The show's second arc takes what I disliked about the first arc and then somehow magnifies it to be even worse. And after thinking about it a lot, I realized that what it comes down to is how this show frames its characters. Now, it could be argued that Guilty Crown has the nerve, the supposed authority to do whatever it wants, whenever it wants, without consent of the viewer. But it's disappointing to me when the show takes any positive qualities that it had in the first half and then just discards them so easily and coldly without a second thought. For the most part, these are horrible people, and what they give these characters to make us forgive them or make their actions justified more often than not just wasn't enough for me, and it bothered me that you had this rather decent story and concept pushed along by an unlikable and unrelatable cast. And don't get me started on the romance elements to the series. The romantic inclinations in this show feel manufactured and unrealistic. Even the main romantic relationship between Shu and Inori just feels not genuine at all. They just have this weird, awkward chemistry between them that the show tries to play off as romantic, but it doesn't feel like that to me. Anyway, visually, the show is what I would expect from Production IG. They would be my go-to production studio for anything sci-fi related, even though I haven't seen much in the way of mechs from them before. Save for Tachikomas, anyway. In general, I was pleased with how well animated everything was, at least in the second half anyways. To be fair, the action by that point had diminished, and there wasn't as much of a need for outstanding visuals, but there is a noticeable drop in quality as the series slogs on. But when it wants to be good, though, the animation is damn good. An example I have is at the end of episode 4. You have the character of Inori falling from a great height, and Shu uses a void that displaces gravity to save her. Now, just the way that the show looks here is absolutely magical. I mean, just look at this. It makes you forget how the characters' emotions are not genuine for a moment. But only just. The music, also, is bloody amazing. Now, the guy that composed the music is Hiroyuki Sawano, and I've talked about his music before. But everything I've talked about was something that he created after this. So, like, Attack on Titan and Kill la Kill. It does surprise me that he keeps on showing up as the composer for all these shows that have very love it or hate it reactions from fans. The soundtrack, though, is the kind of soundtrack that I would totally recommend getting it on its own if you can. It's the kind of thing that I would just listen in the background doing whatever. Just have it playing. It's great. Also, the insert music from Egoist, a unit that's derived from Supercell. Really amazing stuff, like my god. So if nothing else, all this great music just kind of numbs the pain as you try to watch this series. At least it did for me to a point. Likewise, the dub as well is also really well done. Like, I hate the characters regardless, but the dub helped with that. And that's a good thing. For the material that they were given, the actors made the show in dub really enjoyable, and I actually preferred it from when I tried to watch the series in Japanese, but that's just me. Also, it's a Funimation dub, so I personally find that to be expected. Now, if the overall nature of Guilty Crown wasn't so convoluted, I probably would have enjoyed it a lot more. And like I said, the framework, the base of this story at the beginning was solid, but then it slowly melded itself around these rather unsavory characters, and it just turned into a gigantic mess. There are even times when watching this series that I was wondering if whoever was writing it was a fan of M. Night Shyamalan and just wrote things to try and get their senpai to notice them. Most of the show's plot twists range from stupid to ridiculous, and at times they feel like they're not much more than just a way to distract the audience and make them think that something actually deep and meaningful is happening, when it's not. Like, hey, you remember that character you thought that was dead? We had this whole emotional death and everything. Well, guess what? They're back now, and plot twist, they're a villain. But then, plot twist, are they really a villain? Or maybe they are just, plot twist, someone else's puppet. And then we find out at the end that, plot twist, this was all planned from the beginning. I guess. Or was it? Plot, you get the idea. Sure, some of this is foreshadowed technically, but even what was foreshadowed, I didn't expect them to do, because I caught on to it and I was like, they're not that dumb, are they? And I'm not sure what they could have done differently either, but I do know that they could have done at least one thing. Give Shuoma something more than just being an indecisive coward. Sure, he has some semblance of a personality, but I constantly felt that that personality was defined by others, not him. Anything he did, the good, the bad, the ugly, he did because someone else on the cast expected it of him. He himself doesn't actually make many decisions, and the few that he does do doesn't really have any impact on his character. Like, I understand that he's the blank canvas so that the viewer can project themselves onto him, but in the end, very little character progression was actually seen, even though he has gone through so many horrendous things that should have had a lasting effect on his psyche. Guilty Crown is the kind of show that I would hesitate to tell people to watch. It is not great. It is a beautiful looking, amazingly sounding mess of gunk and slop that'll leave this pit inside you, making you wonder what the hell you just watched. And this is probably why it's polarizing to so many people. That said, there is value in the spectacle that it creates, and it's understandable how the hype that this show has exists. The hype is the result of great production value and knowing when to build up the excitement in crucial moments. And Guilty Crown's crowning achievement, if you want to call it that, is that it knows how to play its audience. It shows glimpses of potential, but then ultimately decides to head in another direction. Now, depending on where you stand, you might have liked the direction that it went. That is entirely possible. I did not. And so, with all that in mind, I present Guilty Crown. You know, I really wanted to give it a skip it rating, and I'm just gonna temporarily put that on the screen here for a second, just to show you how seriously I wanted to. But I'm not going to. Because here's the thing, the show's not great, and if this was a one-on-one conversation, I would tell you to skip the series. However, I do recognize that in order to truly appreciate good shows, you have to have some bad shows to compare it to, and you could do a lot worse than this. Also, apparently, Guilty Crown is a good gateway anime. You know, the kind of anime for people that haven't seen a lot yet because it has a good variety of what anime has to offer. It's a clusterfuck of all these really typical anime tropes. The stereotypical main character, the mechs, a form of magic, gratuitously designed female characters. Like, I don't necessarily agree with the viewpoint that it's a good gateway anime, but I can at least understand the reasoning behind it. Anyways, the actual recommendation is to stream it rather than buy, because you could do worse, but you could do so much better. At the time of this video, Guilty Crown has been licensed by Funimation Entertainment and is available from them on both DVD and Blu-ray. Also, the series is available on their website for legal streaming, in sub for free and in dub if you happen to be a member of their premium service. From what I understand, Hulu also hosts it as well, if you're an American, unlike me. For alternate anime recommendations, I point you towards the series I referenced a lot earlier, Code Geass, for having a similar plotline with the whole liberation of Japan and a main character who receives a supernatural power in order to achieve this. Only, you know, Geass is just much better written all told. Second recommendation goes to Eureka 7, as a more upbeat-ish, mech-oriented series with a good focus on the romantic elements between two characters, and it's a great coming-of-age tale to boot. Definitely check those out if you have not. And that's it for me. Please subscribe if you enjoyed the video, follow me on Twitter if you feel so inclined, and hey, if you like what I do here and feel like helping out, please consider going and checking out my Patreon page, and if you feel it within your heart, also consider donating. Very special thanks to Jocelyn Atkins and Joshua Garcia for donating already. You guys are supremely amazing, and I thank you. So until next time, ladies, gentlemen, and others, stay frosty.